Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. And if this is your first time watching, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here for the conversation. So I'm just gonna hop right in. I found an article on colorism a while back when I was doing research for my I Don't Care About Colorism video. And I came across this article called Colorism Myths. The article is by a scholar named Dr. Sarah Webb. She has a bunch of colorism content on her site and YouTube, which I'll link below. So I assume that's what she specializes in. And let me be clear, my goal is to never discredit anyone, especially someone who has invested enough time in their studies to get a doctorate. But that also doesn't mean I have to agree, especially when the social concept is so nuanced. So there are about 10 myths centered around colorism that she listed. And I just want to go through and give my thoughts and opinions about them. So let's go.
Myth 1. Colorism is a myth. Colorism is real. People say it's made up or fake because they are choosing to ignore the facts. I remember reading tweets about the word itself being made up or fake before dictionaries caught on. Here's the thing. In 2021, legitimate information on colorism is accessible enough that anyone truly open to learning and understanding can do just that. So when I see people outright denying colorism, I know there's a deeper problem there that I cannot solve.
So immediately I thought about a comment that was left on my page that I agree with completely as a counter to the first myth. Let's take a look. Did y'all see that 499 says, while I feel that colorism exists, I don't see it existing in the Black American community. Colorism, much like racism, is systematic. It keeps people from obtaining education, property ownership, gainful employment, skews the judicial systems against them, etc. It's a system in which the lighter skinned members of a group have control and can prevent the darker skinned members of a group from obtaining those resources. In the United States, whether you're light or dark, you don't control anything. Therefore, you're not in a position to block or grant access to any resources. You can very clearly see colorism in India's caste system and even in Latin American countries where people are the same ethnicities or races are treated differently through the system based on skin tone. Honestly, when it comes to Black Americans, the topic of colorism is very much so centered upon the male gaze and who Black men find attractive. Black people are not out here blocking other Black people from jobs and home loans based on complexion. This, all of this, we do not have a caste system. Light skinned people aren't controlling the access dark skinned people have to life and the pursuit of happiness. We're not actually trying to stop dark skinned people from doing anything. All right, moving on. So I had already finished this video, but someone commented such a good objective viewpoint on my last video that I had to come back and add this. Tiger Lily 91979 says, I'm a well-traveled Jamaican American born and raised in the US, and I pay especially close attention to different Black diasporas. With that in mind, I can confidently say ADOS Black folks are literally the most privileged Black group in the world. One of the most privileged oppressed groups in the world, especially when you consider America's soft power. People in the US carry so much privilege regardless of skin tone. Some may have a hard time processing that because the Black community here is so attached to oppression being a part of their identity, but that doesn't make it any less true. So enjoy it. Black people are a huge reason, not the only reason, that's for another conversation, why the US carries so much weight in the world. The US government reaped the energy of Black folks, so the Black community has every right to enjoy the benefits too. You're right about a huge chunk of oppression being mental. There was a long time in which I would have been triggered by that statement, but now I see the light. The world has taken advantage of Black people across the globe, but not every group gets to enjoy the perks of being from a main imperial power. ADOS have the unique opportunity to claim the joy and luxury they deserve to an extent I haven't seen for Black people elsewhere. No, this does not negate the atrocities and systemic racism. Multiple realities can coexist. And to be honest, the US privilege does show in a lot of ADOS behaviors, mentalities, and opportunities that are more difficult for a lot of other people in the Afro diaspora to access. Might as well become more aware of the privilege and make the most of it. On a side note, oppression the Black community faces in the US isn't an excuse to downplay the global privilege. Sadly, a lot of ADOS folks I've met slash befriended abroad have that mentality. It only adds to the many examples of cognitive dissonance in the Black community. That ultimately does no good for mental health. Joy is a choice, right, and active practice. So start ASAP. Embracing the goodness in life brings much needed balance to the addiction to struggle rampant in the Black community. Tiger Lily, you better motherfucking preach. Shout out to you. But anyway, back to the myth.
Myth 2. Colorism goes both ways. It does not go both ways. Colorism is systemic, and nowhere in our society has the research shown that lighter-skinned people are at a disadvantage relative to darker-skinned people. Personal conflicts and bullying do not amount to the reversal of a system. Furthermore, colorism is born of the ideology that dark skin and therefore dark skinned people are inherently inferior. Whatever backlash lighter skinned people receive, it's not the reverse of that, because it's not based in an ideology of light skin inferiority. Rather, it is almost always a frustration about the existing system that privileges and values lighter skin tones above darker skin tones. Instead of saying, they hate me because I'm light skinned, start saying, they hate that I have light skinned privilege. It rolls off the tongue a little different. Doesn't mean anyone deserves to be mistreated, but the solution rests in being honest about the root cause of it. Another reason the both ways argument is flawed is because it assumes colorism is light skinned people against dark skinned people of the same race. But colorism is really people of every race and shade, consciously or unconsciously, against dark-skinned people. So, yes, dark-skinned people can be colorist against other dark-skinned people, including themselves.
Okay, so at least she admits that dark skinned people can be and are colors toward each other, which means they're helping to perpetuate the idea that dark skin is inferior, which is a personal choice. And it feels like she's excusing being a bigoted bully if you're dark skinned. She's definitely minimizing the effects of dark skinned people weaponizing their internalized colorism, and it's gross. Because anyone can technically weaponize their internalized biases. I saw a comment of a light skinned girl somewhere, and she said that it's our duty as light skinned people to reach back and help dark skinned people. And do what exactly? Get pulled into the abyss of victimhood and self loathing? There's no amount of light skin guilt that can save someone who's dead set on having an inferiority complex. How am I supposed to position myself in society in a meaningful and helpful way that could actually benefit dark skinned people if you want me to eradicate the perceived privileges you think I have? Because let's keep it a buck. From my personal experience, people watching me succeed in life might say it's Black excellence publicly and then will say it's light skin privilege behind closed doors. When really it's a combination of me using things like my intellectual privilege, pretty privilege. Maybe I'm just ambitious as fuck. I'm not rich, but I have made deliberate choices in life to make sure that I'm in a financial position to do what I want. So, no, I will not forfeit my privileges. Even if it is light skin privilege, I'm not going to punish myself for being born, quote unquote, desirable. The dialogue that I've seen around colorism has made it very clear they're just trying to switch spots and be perceived as the most desired. The goal is absolutely to, quote unquote, reverse the ideology and view light skin as inferior. And that's clear based on the self deprecating narrative that light skinned saviors have to promote to get brownie points. There are a lot of light skinned saviors out there talking down on other light skins, and it ain't doing shit to eliminate colorism. It's just soothing the egos of internalized colorists. In reality, they want to switch the overall narrative to light skin inferiority, not get rid of the idea that one type of blackness or blackness in general is inferior. Think about how many times you've heard something along the lines of light skin is going out of style. They started with light skinned men by making the public narrative, oh, we don't like light skinned men, although that's a damn lie. Then somehow they managed to gaslight the struggle identified light skinned people into calling themselves brown. Even after black men decided that they preferred dating out, it became very evident that light skinned women will always be desirable to someone. So the colorism warriors started to loudly weaponize their internalized colorism to control the narrative about who is and can be light skinned. Black people dating out and making more biracial children only made moving the light skin goalposts easier. It's as if they thought, oh, now we can make it even more white supremacist. So if you don't have a type 3 hair type, green eyes, and a white passing skin tone, you can't get the coveted title of light skin. They're literally using Rachel Dolezal as the point of reference for light skin at this point. and the criteria constantly changes to fit whatever narrative they're pushing in the moment.
Myth 3. Colorism only affects dark-skinned people. Colorism can affect anyone who is darker than someone else, even if they're not really dark at all. A brown or tan person could be ostracized or discriminated against compared to people with even lighter skin than theirs. Several research studies isolate demographics to measure the impact of colorism beyond the light-dark binary. What they reveal is that there is indeed a spectrum of privilege where even a difference between very light and light results in different outcomes, as does medium and dark, or very dark. I go back to my analogy of money. Even though $100,000 gives you access to a lot more things than $25,000, it doesn't give you as much access as $1 million. The notion of being a safe brown is only evident in the interpersonal arena, but the research shows that even folks with mid-tone complexions experience inequity relative to lighter-skinned folks in employment, marriage, education, etc.
Exactly. And we see this all the time when they try to humble light skinned monoracial people with lighter or white passing mixed people. I really have no other thoughts about the outcomes comment other than maybe the outcomes are indicative of an inferiority complex because people who decide they want more usually get more. That's it. I find that most Black people who make it to the love and belonging level of the hierarchy of needs don't usually have a problem bypassing isms to gain esteem. That's not a claim that they didn't experience isms. I experience isms. But I'll say this as much as I need to, dark skin is not a disability. Being rejected doesn't automatically account for colorism. You just need to actually try to pursue what you want and not quit at the first sign of rejection. Literally, the whole theme of Blackness in America is we shall overcome. You can't overcome if you just quit every time you're told no or not handed something. The first stage of rejection is proving to others that you deserve what you want. All the other stages of rejection is you needing to prove to yourself that you deserve what you want. Okay. I'm not saying the research she's referencing is wrong or I know more than research. I'm just saying that after I left my biology major, I went to a math major with statistics concentration. So I need to see the controls, the sample size, etc., to know that the info isn't skewed or isn't statistically insignificant as it pertains to Black Americans. Because at the end of the day, POCs are the global majority. So she could be referencing colorism research from, again, a place like India that has a very prominent caste system where everyone is a POC, therefore, lighter people actually do function as oppressors. In America, where white people are the majority, white supremacy is the actual thing, not the undercurrent. And light skinned Black people have no power within the system. She's talking about inequity in employment, marriage, and education. Newsflash, Black men aren't marrying at very high rates, period. And historically, Black women are less likely to date out. So, yeah, you're probably not going to get married, at least not to someone worth marrying. Education wise, no one is stopping anyone from prioritizing education. It's your duty to do that at home. Like, be fucking for real. We have an entire generation of people who should have been left fucking behind, and college is expensive as hell. I assure you, how much you prioritize education has nothing to do with skin tone. At what point do we just admit that the inferiority complex isn't sourced externally? I also don't like the money analogy because it doesn't take into consideration other types of privilege and disadvantages, both visible and invisible, that could add and subtract from any individual's bucket, regardless of skin tone. There are plenty of privileged dark skinned Black people who have, indeed, like I said, bypassed isms.
Myth 4. Colorism only affects Black, African American people. Colorism is seen in all ethnic and racial groups. Asia has been the largest and fastest growing market for skin whitening products. White folks have long believed in blonde hair and blue eyes as superior racial features. Latinx folks, who are still largely seen as separate from Blackness even though they can be racially Black as well, have practiced mejorando la raza to lighten their future generations. Even many indigenous Americans express a preference for whiteness in both aesthetic and culture.
I mean, white supremacy and self hate is a disease that no one seems to want to cure. So, oh well.
Myth 5. Colorism is only perpetuated within a race. A person's colorist preference for lighter skin does not stop within their own race. That's not how implicit skin tone bias works. It doesn't shut off just because the other person is of a different race than you. What we might observe is that people can be more comfortable expressing or acting on their colorism with folks of the same race. We might also observe that where anti-blackness is really the root cause of discrimination, that a dark-skinned non-black person is preferred over a lighter-skinned black person.
Well, yeah, depending on the context, that could be racism or ethnocentrism. I mean, I just think there are other isms that could be at play in these scenarios. We just need to know the context. I mean, it's not wrong, but still, you need more details than just skin tone.
Myth 6. White people do not perpetuate colorism. White people are just as likely, if not more likely, to perpetuate colorism than people of color. It is very often so subconscious that they may not recognize it. White people may be less likely to engage in the overt forms of colorism, but they do perpetuate it in social institutions like the legal system, schooling and education, employment, sports, etc. We must also remember that in the African American context in particular, colorism is a direct result of how white people treated us, perceived us, and described us based on our complexions.
I said this before that I grew up in a Jim Crow-esque place, so I don't know. I've seen a lot of racism, say from like white teachers in black schools, but I'd also argue that I've seen dark skinned people do better in professional settings. Probably because they tend to be most of the time more white supremacists and accepting of hierarchies. In the predominantly white spaces I've been in, maybe it's just because the dark skinned people who I was around were more willing to shuck and jive. They seem to be accepted more easily than me. I've had several instances where I felt like a white person and a dark skinned person teamed up against me, whether the dark skinned person was black or not. So I don't know. People tend to be intimidated by me anyway, so it could be a combination of things. Especially once I start to outperform them. White people have also used the same type of she thinks she's too good, she's stuck up stereotypes against me. But one of the most common scenarios I've seen for this myth in particular is white women who fetishize mixed babies. I remember I was talking to this blonde haired, blue eyed white lady one time, and she was like, "Oh, my kids are gonna look Puerto Rican or like Dominican or something." And I was like, "You mean they're gonna look like me?" And she was pissed because I'm looking at her African husband like, "Girl, you need to adjust your expectations because I don't know if your genes are that strong." And what do you think her kids look like now? My little cousins. Like all biracials don't look like Jason Derulo's ex, and that's okay.
Myth 7. Colorism is less important than racism. All of the same structural and social inequalities folks care about when it comes to racism are paralleled by colorism, especially in countries like the United States, where someone can be legally classified as black, even though they look exactly like people who are legally classified as white. The wage gaps, the employment gaps, the education gaps, the crime and punishment gaps between races are mirrored very closely among individuals of the same race. Several studies find, in fact, that for very light-skinned African American or Latinx groups, there is no measurable difference between their life outcomes and the life outcomes of white people. Shocking. This is also why I now prefer the lens of colorism and anti-blackness over the lens of racism. I'll keep saying it. Most of the ills we attribute to racism are much better explained through the lens of colorism and anti-blackness specifically. Also, race is a social construct partially based on the physical differences among people that are easily observable to the human eye, especially differences in skin tone, hair type, facial features, and body type. Thus, it was early forms of colorism, meaning the differential assignment of value, virtue, and legal rights to groups of people based on their skin color and other features that lead to the creation of the notion of race and consequently racism to begin with.
In the context of Black Americans, which is obviously the perspective I'm speaking from, racism is definitely more important and prominent than colorism. Even saying this is given, I'm pandering for your trauma bond clicks to me because what? But I guess I would too, just my bread and butter. But anyway, let's not be disingenuous. Colorism absolutely has negative effects, but it doesn't lead to very insidious, overarching phenomena like redlining or wage discrimination or food deserts and lack of access to basic resources within communities or police brutality and gatekeeping of certain blue collar skills that are needed to effectively build communities or even say capital investment discrimination and other forms of economic and systemic discriminations. Sure, there's hiring discrimination based on colorism, but you have to get past the racism first. Because let's say they see an ethnic name on your resume before they even meet you to know whether you're dark skinned. Anti blackness isn't limited to dark skinned people, obviously, and other isms like futurism and texturism prove this. So be so fucking serious right now. It's feeling like a reinforcement of that being a house nigga is better than being a field nigga kind of sentiment, and the existence and similar treatment of other minority groups in our country is proof that racism will always be the overarching ism. Colorism wasn't holding those children hostage at the border. That was racism, sweetheart.
Myth 8. Talking about colorism causes division. Colorism is the cause of division and inequality. It has been creating division for generations. Staying silent enables continued division. Talking about it enables us to find solutions. Also, rather than talking about division, let's talk about the inequalities that exist due to colorism. Staying silent about colorism perpetuates the inequalities caused by colorism. And folks use the accusation of causing division to shut down conversations that might rectify those inequalities, because they are, for some reason, invested in them. Any so-called unity that demands my silence is not unity. It's just old-fashioned oppression. There can be no true unity amongst us without equity and justice and accountability amongst us. Don't be fooled by those who actively undermine dialogue on colorism in the name of unity. They're not protecting our unity. They're protecting the status quo.
And I quote, any so called unity that demands my silence is not unity. Ding, 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 ding. This also goes for light skinned Black people who want to have a dialogue about how we're negatively affected by isms as well. So we can just move on. But dark skinned Black people don't want to talk about it, they want to yell at us about it. I think she should be emphasizing accountability for darker skinned Black people who are just as invested in colorism as well, because I seriously doubt that's who she's talking about based on her tone. A la Alice Walker, the Black American version of colorism is about who and what is beautiful. And again, we don't have a caste system here in America. They're conflating the belief that lighter skin is more beautiful with tangible power, which we collectively do not have. I have yet to see colorism in America do anything other than upset Black femcells who wish they had got more attention from men, which is probably why I don't see a lot of complaints from pretty dark skinned women. And then sometimes, if you listen close enough, it's almost like they're saying, oh, we don't hate the actual system. We're just enraged that you're light skinned and don't hate it, or at least you don't pretend to hate it, and then tiptoe around the fact that we've internalized colorism on our own volition. And I'm like, oh, okay, so you want me to be a light skinned savior? Because that fake ass light skinned savior shit is just the way that struggle identified light skinned people pander to dark skinned people so that they can feel less guilty about the pedestalization they're going to receive anyway. I've never actually heard a light skinned savior ask dark skinned Black people why they don't just stop pedestalizing light skinned people. They be like, I know I'm pedestalized, but not too much. Not too much, please. I don't deserve your admiration. I'm just a lowly light skin. And then the dark skinned people be eating that fake ass shit up.
Myth 9. Light skin privilege doesn't exist. Light skinned people have the same experience as dark skinned people. Light skin privilege is a very real thing. Light skin privilege exists. I've already noted the research on the systemic inequalities and the implicit biases that all favor lighter skinned people, so I won't spend much time on that part. But what I'd like to add here is 1. You don't have to be aware of your privilege to have it. 2. Every aspect of our identities impacts our experiences in the world. Skin color is no different. People can call out white feminists who say, we're all women, and then proceed to say, we're all black. But fam, intersectionality matters. 3. Privilege is not all or nothing. Just because you're marginalized for your race doesn't mean you can't be privileged because of your skin tone. 4. There are plenty of light-skinned people who have actively invested in, perpetuated, and exploited their privilege. Rather than complaining on a dark-skinned woman's post about not being black enough, go hold your fellow light-skinned people accountable.
Intersectionality absolutely does matter, but usually only when they want it to. I feel more sorry for a black passing mixed person with dyslexia growing up in buttfuck Idaho that has a racist mama than I do the average dark skinned woman in Atlanta who has her whole life together because, well, dark skin is not a disability. This statement just felt riddled with undertones of male centeredness to me. But that would make sense considering that Black American colorism is very male centered. And she's basically saying, okay, go cry your light skinned tears over there. But they always do that to deflect from the fact that dark skinned Black people work just as hard, if not harder, to perpetuate colorism. If light skinned people can't acknowledge the negative effects colorism has on us as well, especially in the context of Black Americans, where the convo is extremely superficial, don't expect us to give a fuck. It's so superficial, they never just come out and say specifically what the privilege is. The privilege most of them are referring to is the intangible privilege of attention. It's compliments. It's being palatable, more palatable anyway, to white society. And sure, those things can translate into economic privileges as well, but that can be true for anyone, especially if you're attractive or talented. That's why you have very dark skinned models blowing up all the time. Every other type of oppression she mentioned in this blog is the work of racism, not light skinned Black people. Like, I really want to know what exactly they think is happening for light skinned Black people that's negatively affecting the lives of dark skinned Black people. And the answer can't be that we just quote unquote get better treatment from them, might I add. Colorism is a system of oppression. How are light skinned Black people oppressing dark skinned Black people? I'll wait. Again, because there's no caste system here. They'll say, y'all need to dismantle the system. Since when have light skinned Black people not fought for our collective civil rights right beside dark skinned Black people? We are still here being very much marginalized by the same shit. And if they would just shut the fuck up and listen or just look around, we could reassure them that it happens even when they're not trying to humble us. I have yet to see light skin privilege used in the capacity of, say, like a racist white woman calling the police on a Black man who's minding his business on a random Tuesday because she's bored. When it comes to skin tone, I've never seen a Black person's privilege ruin the life of another Black person. But I guess there's still time. And I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm just saying it's significantly less common than racism affecting all Black people. Keep in mind, even as lighter skinned people, for most of the social privileges we obtain, we either have to create them ourselves or work super hard to maintain them. It's like they don't realize one of the most negative aspects of colorism is the creation of a scarcity mindset that reinforces their inferiority complex. God forbid you're an audacious light skin who wants more from life and then you work hard to achieve it. And it's like if they feel it's more than what they think a comparable dark skinned Black person has achieved, suddenly the light skinned person is just privileged and everything the darker skinned person has ever worked for and achieved doesn't even matter. It's sad because so many extraordinary people are counting themselves out for fear of rejection due to colorism and not even trying to pursue opportunities just based on their skin tone, which ironically, consequently, is leading to a lack of representation. Back to her money analogy. Stop telling people that they only have 25K because they're dark skinned. Because even if they do, you should be encouraging them to discover what privileges and talents that they have that they can use to flip it until they have the hypothetical $1 million. Like, welcome to the Matrix. Life presents challenges. Figure out how to work around them. And another thing I want to add, since she mentioned light skinned people defending themselves on the internet posts, is instead of encouraging dark skinned themselves to cry about how light skinned women are such terrible people who quote unquote actively invest in and exploit their privilege, how about encouraging them to look into self improvement outside of the male gaze to create their own privileges and pedestals and then learn to control their own narratives? Because that's really what they need. Because who the fuck do you think is going to invest in a privilege and not take advantage of it? Even if you happen to be born with it and decide to use said privilege even more strategically, that still requires some type of investment. That's time and effort. You think women with BBLs pay all this money and risk their lives to not flex it on on Instagram for likes and attention? Be fucking for real. Enjoying affirmation and attention is a human thing. Like, how are you wanting me to be apologetic for the colorist pedestal you're maintaining? Just knock us off of it. But that's not going to happen. The internalized colorism and white supremacy won't let them. They want light skinned people to feel like our social status is at their mercy. But it's like, newsflash, if I lose one pedestal, I'll just actively invest in another one that I have more control over. Duh.
Myth 10. Dark-skinned women who talk about colorism are insecure and jealous. Would you accuse Martin Luther King Jr. of being jealous of white people and insecure about his blackness because he spoke out about racism? No. A dark-skinned person speaking about harmful systems is actually displaying radical, audacious self-love. It's precisely because we do love ourselves that we are standing up for ourselves.
Yeah, that or they're pandering for pennies. When someone builds an entire brand around experiencing colorism, then wakes up one day and decides, this conversation is old, it's toxic, I don't want to talk about it anymore, and just leaves their whole audience hanging, you have to know you've been pandered to. Sweetie, you've been had, okay? You have allowed yourself to be rage baited and trauma bonded for profit. Come to terms with that. It is not jealousy or insecurity if you're calling it out because someone is being an asshole in real time. But let's not pretend making the colorism struggle your whole identity outside of the actual situations isn't rooted in jealousy and insecurity. Healthy, self loving people spend time affirming themselves, not obsessing over the possibility of somebody else's prejudice. I will always tell people to advocate for themselves when faced with an ism. That's self love. Radical self love is giving yourself permission to exist as a human being outside of that one layer of your identity. But that's all I have for this one. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. And if you're interested in joining the conversation, be sure to leave a comment below and hit that subscribe button on your way out. And I'll see you next time. Bye.